What truly breaks your enemies isn't revenge. It's not a clever insult. It's not some perfect moment of justice. It's when you rise so far above them, they can't even touch your world anymore. They whisper your name, waiting for a reaction, but you say nothing. You stay calm, untouched. Because here's the truth. Every second you spend thinking about revenge is a second they still own a piece of your mind. And they don't deserve that. Not your energy, not your emotions, not a single moment of your peace. The Stoics understood this long before we did. They didn't waste their lives plotting payback. They built lives so grounded, so purposeful, that the people who tried to hurt them became irrelevant. In this video, I'm going to show you the 7 most powerful Stoic principles that will help you stop chasing revenge and start rising with clarity, self-control, and unshakable peace. So if you're ready to take your power back, hit like, subscribe, and let's begin. Number 1, the illusion of power. We begin here at the moment your pulse spikes and your jaw tightens, when every cell in your body screams for payback. All of a sudden you imagine the perfect line that will slice them open, the public victory that will teach them a lesson. Yet, unbeknownst to most of us, that surge of pleasure is nothing more than a neural trick, a dopamine flare masquerading as strength. Marcus Aurelius warned, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, revenge dulls the edge of your character just to nick the skin of theirs. And the price is your peace. First of all, consider this. If your calm can be kidnapped by another person's insult, who is truly in charge of your life? Because of this dependence, the Stoics classified revenge as borrowed fire, hot, bright, and gone in seconds, leaving you colder than before. To illustrate, look at Oprah Winfrey. She endured childhood abuse so savage it could have turned her into a lifelong crusader for retribution. Instead, she chose an ancient Stoic pivot, transformed pain into purpose. She invested her anger into her craft, built an empire of empathy, and today the people who once tried to break her can't even buy a ticket into her orbit. That is Stoic alchemy in real time. Moreover, neuroscience now backs the ancients. Studies from Stanford show that dwelling on revenge lights up the brain's threat circuitry, the amygdala, and the dorsal anterior cingulate, while shutting down the prefrontal cortex where rational decisions live. In fact, the scan of a mind plotting payback looks almost identical to a mind experiencing physical pain. Therefore, holding on to revenge is literally hurting you. Seneca put it differently, but just as sharply. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it. Next, let's test this principle in daily life. Imagine a coworker steals credit for your idea during a meeting. Your first instinct is to expose them, maybe blast off a scathing email. Yet notice what that does. It anchors your sense of worth to their behavior, tying your emotional weather to their forecasts. Alternatively, you can channel the Stoic move. Silent refinement. Strengthen the idea, present the data, exceed expectations so clearly that the truth becomes undeniable without you uttering a single bitter word. Suddenly, the scoreboard shifts. They lose status and you gain influence, all because you refuse the bait of revenge. Indeed, the Greeks called this eret, excellence for its own sake, not to humiliate the other, but to perfect your craft. What's more, the higher you rise, the smaller their betrayal appears, until it shrinks to a speck on the radar of your ambition. However, I'm not saying you should become a doormat. Boundaries matter. Stoicism isn't passive. It's precise. You address the issue firmly, perhaps through HR or a quiet conversation, but you refuse to let rage narrate the meeting. Ultimately, the illusion of revenge is that it's about justice. The reality is that it's about control, and the instant you try to control them, you surrender control of you. Finally, remember this. Revenge chains you to the past. Discipline escorts you into the future. Therefore, in this series of 7 Stoic strategies, the first key is clear: shatter the mirage, refuse the bait, rise in a different direction, just like Oprah did, just like the Stoics teach. Furthermore, picture how your future self, calm, focused, already living the promotion your rival wanted, looks back on this moment. Does that version of you feel triumphant because you shouted them down? Or proud because you evolved beyond the need? Visualizing that future clarity can snap you out of today's emotional fog. Do that, and their power evaporates, while yours compounds quietly, day after disciplined day. Number 2, biology is not destiny. You feel it the instant your heart jumps. Blood rushing to your face, breath tightening in your chest. All of a sudden, the body is screaming, attack, defend, destroy. That response is biology, not betrayal. Your amygdala has fired a red alert flare before your higher brain has even rubbed its eyes awake. Yet, and this will blow your mind, biology is only the draft. Reason is the editor. The Stoics knew that every emotion begins as a chemical spark, but it never has to graduate into a wildfire. First of all, let's dismantle the myth that instinct equals truth. Neuroscientists at UCLA mapped the 2-second lag between an emotional impulse and a conscious decision. In that tiny window lives the entire difference between a life of reaction and a life of mastery. Because of this, modern cognitive therapists, descendants of Stoic logic, teach the pause. Name the feeling, breathe, then choose. The brain, like iron, can be tempered. Each deliberate pause hammers it into a stronger blade. To illustrate, consider Michelle Obama. During the 2016 election season, she was mocked, misquoted, and provoked on a daily basis. Yet, unbeknownst to her critics, every insult became fuel for composure. She coined the line, "When they go low, we go high," turning what could have been a public meltdown into a masterclass in prefrontal leadership. She proved that biology may start the fire, but character decides whether that fire burns the house or forges steel. That is Stoicism in heels and history. Moreover, the data support her stance. Functional MRI studies show that labeling your emotion, simply saying "I'm angry," reduces amygdala activity and reroutes blood flow to the prefrontal cortex. Marcus Aurelius discovered the same effect without a scanner. He journaled his rage onto parchment, naming the storm so his reason could navigate through it. Journaling is not nostalgia, it is neural rewiring. Next, let's apply this to your everyday arena. Imagine a client ambushes you with public criticism on a Zoom call. Instinct says fight back instantly, flood the chat with receipts, prove them wrong. Yet the pause, 3 deep breaths, eyes steady, gives you choice. You respond with calm. Thank you for that feedback. Let's review the facts after this meeting. Suddenly the heat drains from the room. You keep your dignity, and paradoxically, you gain influence. Executive presence is measured by how slowly you speak when everyone else is sprinting toward chaos. Indeed, Seneca warned that an angry mind rides a wild horse blindfolded. Consequently, the Stoic trains the horse before the race begins. Morning cold showers, deliberate breath holds, silent walks without earbuds. Each practice nudges the nervous system toward resilience. Similarly, athletes like Novak Djokovic employ mindfulness between volleys, resetting the breath so the next swing is governed by skill, not surge. Excellence repeats, biology fires, discipline filters, brilliance follows. Finally, remember this: biology is the roar, philosophy is the reins. Every surge of cortisol is a reminder, not a mandate. Use it as a bell summoning you to awareness. With each passing second you practice the pause, you prove that destiny bows to decision. So the next time your pulse spikes, whisper to yourself, "I am the gatekeeper of my response." then watch as the storm outside shrinks before the calm within. That is not denial, that is dominion, and it is yours to claim. Above all, Epictetus reminds us that it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. Biology supplies the thing, the raw sensation. But judgment is the sculptor. Change the judgment, and the whole landscape shifts. That single insight transforms a racing pulse from a trigger into a training partner, a somatic coach handing you the opportunity to practice mastery in real time. Number 3, the more you react, the more they control you. Here's a brutal truth that most people are afraid to admit. The person who makes you angry controls you. Epictetus said this more than 2,000 years ago, and to this day it remains cold, hard truth. Every time you scream because someone disrespects you, every time you lose sleep over something someone said behind your back, every time you abandon your priorities to argue online, you're not fighting back, you're being controlled. Because if your mood rises and falls based on their behavior, then you're no longer the master of your own mind. To put it differently, if someone can press a button and make you explode, then the button isn't in your hand. It's in theirs. That's not power, that's puppetry, and the Stoic makes it their mission to cut the strings. You see, the world will always provoke you. People will misunderstand you, misrepresent you, and underestimate you. But what matters isn't what they say. It's whether you allow their words to dictate your state. Think about Taylor Swift. For a time, she was constantly dragged into public feuds, lies, and character attacks. Her name was in headlines. Her intentions were questioned. Her art was dismissed. But instead of reacting, instead of defending herself at every turn, she did what the Stoics have always taught: redirect the energy. She didn't go online to rant. She went inward, she wrote music, she rebuilt her voice from the inside out. And while the world was still talking, she was rising, charting #1, breaking records, becoming untouchable. That's Stoic strength in action. Silence, not as surrender, but as strategy. Moreover, modern psychology confirms what the ancients already knew. Each time you react emotionally, your brain lays down neural pathways, habit loops, that make it more likely you'll react the same way next time. It becomes easier to spiral, easier to overthink, easier to lash out. That's why the Stoics trained themselves not to react immediately. They knew that reflexive emotion is slavery, delayed emotion. That's freedom, because only in the pause do you reclaim the right to choose. So how do you break the loop? Through one deceptively simple yet radically powerful act: stillness. When someone disrespects you, don't bite, don't bark, don't fire back. Pause, breathe, observe your emotions like a distant witness. You're not suppressing your anger, you're studying it. You're choosing not to let it drive the car. And in that moment, when you say nothing, when you do nothing, you win. And very soon after, you'll notice something else. People who once relied on your reactions to feel powerful suddenly lose interest because silence is confrontation without chaos. It's the message that says, you no longer have access to me. Not everyone deserves your reaction. A worthless comment doesn't deserve to ruin your whole day. A toxic person doesn't deserve your energy. A petty action doesn't deserve to hijack your focus. Your power lies not in your reaction, but in your refusal to give them what they want: your attention. Seneca said, "The greatest minds are untouched by the smallest things." And you will never become great if you keep explaining yourself to every rumor, every jab, every betrayal. Your composure is your weapon, your restraint is your message, and your silence, when chosen consciously, is your ultimate liberation. So ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it really worth your peace, your time, your growth? If the answer is no, then smile, walk away, let them drown in the chaos they created for themselves. While you, You continue building a life they can no longer touch. That's how the Stoic wins. Not loudly, not dramatically, just unshakably. Number 4, you don't need to be understood to be free. There's a quiet craving that lives in almost everyone. The desire to be understood, to be seen for who you truly are, to have your intentions recognized, your heart validated, your truth heard without distortion. We long for someone to say, "I get you. I finally see what you meant." But here's the trap. The more you chase that moment, the more power you hand over, the more you beg to be understood, the more you allow misunderstanding to rule your emotional life. Because most people don't listen to understand. They listen to react, to judge, to project their own insecurities onto your words. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks ill of you and it is untrue, you don't have to defend yourself. That's their issue, not yours." That sounds clean, but it's hard, especially when you're being slandered, misquoted, twisted into someone you're not. The instinct to clear your name is deeply human, but the Stoic doesn't operate on instinct. They operate on insight, and the insight is this. When you spend your life correcting every lie, you abandon the truth of who you are. You become reactive instead of reflective. You spend your energy managing perception instead of mastering presence. Take Keanu Reeves, for example. One of the most globally recognized actors, and yet one of the most mysterious. Rumors surround his life. People invent stories. The internet speculates endlessly, and still, no rebuttal, no press tour of explanations, no emotional outburst. Just silence, just work, just dignity. And ironically, that silence didn't make him look weak. It made him look invincible. The less he explained, the more people respected him. Why? Because he didn't need to be understood to stay grounded. He chose clarity over noise, direction over distraction. And this principle isn't just for celebrities. It's for anyone who's ever been misjudged, mislabeled, or misunderstood by the people closest to them. You might be walking away from a relationship where someone twisted your intentions. You might be healing from a family dynamic that always made you the villain. You might be in a workplace where your silence is misread as weakness. But the truth is, freedom doesn't come when others understand you. Freedom comes when you no longer need them to. Psychologists call this emotional differentiation, the ability to maintain your inner stability even when others misread your motives. It's the space between who you are and how others see you. When that space is wide, you are free. When that space collapses, you become a prisoner of perception. And that's why the Stoic doesn't chase validation. They live in alignment. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, not prove one, not convince anyone, just be." So here's the shift. Instead of trying to edit every version of you that lives in someone else's mind, return to the only version that matters, the one you know intimately, the one built on virtue, integrity, and effort. Because at the end of the day, people will still misunderstand you. That's a guarantee. But when you stop needing their approval to breathe easy, you've already won. And very soon after, you'll realize something quietly powerful. You don't need them to understand you. You need you to understand you. And in that moment, when you let go of the need to set the record straight, you step into something rare and unshakable. You enter a kind of peace that doesn't ask permission, a kind of clarity that doesn't require applause. That's what the Stoics called invincibility of the soul. Not because the world stops attacking, but because none of it sticks. Number 5, not reacting doesn't mean you didn't notice. One of the most common misconceptions people make is this: if you don't react, it must mean you're weak. If you don't speak up, you must not have noticed. If you stay silent, they assume you're unaware, incapable, or indifferent. But that's completely wrong. The Stoic doesn't stay silent because they're blind. They stay silent because they see clearly. They see everything. And precisely because they see everything, they choose not to be pulled down into the chaos of others. Their silence isn't ignorance, it's discernment. You don't need to react to prove that you've noticed what's going on. The truth doesn't need your outburst. It just needs your steadiness. And sometimes the most powerful signal you can send is no signal at all, because your non-reaction speaks volumes. It says, I saw it, I evaluated it, and I chose peace. What most people don't understand is that silence, when chosen deliberately, is an act of dominance. Not submission, it's not weakness, it's restraint. And restraint is one of the rarest and most misunderstood forms of power. Nothing unsettles someone more than unexpected calm from the person they were sure would crack. Take Robert Pattinson, for example. There was a time when critics ridiculed his choices, mocked his interviews, and questioned his talent. The world had a narrative ready for him, but instead of reacting, defending, or spiraling, he got to work. He stayed quiet. He made bolder, more nuanced decisions. He redefined his career, not through press statements, but through presence. He didn't need to prove he saw the noise. He just chose not to let it define his direction. That's not avoidance, that's mastery. From a psychological standpoint, deliberate silence is emotional sophistication. When you resist the urge to fire back, you create a crucial gap between the event and your reaction. That gap is where the Stoic lives. It's in that pause, where you decide with clarity whether this deserves your energy. You don't react just because someone pushed a button. You decide if the button even exists. And here's what's even more fascinating. Your non-reaction makes people uncomfortable, not because you're passive, but because they can't predict you anymore. You've interrupted their script. They were counting on your anger, your defensiveness, your retaliation. When you give them none of that, they're left facing themselves. And that's far more confronting than any comeback you could have delivered. Seneca said, an insult has no power unless you grant it. And Marcus Aurelius took it even further. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Put together, those two truths form an unshakable law of inner peace. Your mind is your domain. What enters it, what affects it, is entirely up to you. So the next time someone says something that makes your blood boil, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is this worth my stability? If the answer is no, then you already have your answer. You don't need to clap back to prove you're awake. You don't need to get loud to prove you're strong. You just need to hold your posture, protect your peace, and let your silence echo through the room. Because in a world addicted to noise, to outrage, to quick reactions, the one who stays silent becomes the one who commands. Not through intimidation, but through clarity, not through force, but through grounded presence. That is not fear, that is self-governance. And the one who governs themselves governs everything. Number 6, you don't need revenge, you need rebirth. There are certain wounds so deep they whisper the lie that only revenge will bring relief. You tell yourself that if they feel the pain you felt, if they lose what they made you lose, then maybe, just maybe, your heart will finally be quiet. But here's the raw truth. Revenge doesn't heal. It delays. It distracts. It drags you deeper into the very pain you were trying to escape. It gives your power away under the illusion that you're reclaiming it. The Stoics understood this with terrifying clarity. Epictetus said, when someone does wrong, he does wrong to himself. Meaning, their harm to you already carries its own punishment. Ignorance, disconnection, inner chaos. But the moment you begin plotting how they'll pay, you're drinking the same poison. You're still giving them your energy, still letting them dictate the state of your soul. That's not justice, that's emotional captivity. Imagine this. You're standing in a pitch-dark gallery gripping a cracked statue. That statue is your past. It's what they did. The betrayal, the insult, the humiliation. And you cling to it, tight, because you're waiting. For closure, for an apology, for acknowledgement. But no one walks in. No one sees your pain the way you do. And you stay frozen, not because the pain is too strong, but because your grip is. The Stoic would look at you and say, put it down, not because they deserve release, but because you do. Because the longer you wait for someone to validate your story, the longer you stay a character in a script they wrote. And you're not here to live in reruns. You're here to evolve. Moreover, rebirth doesn't happen when they lose. It happens when you walk away from needing them to. It happens when their name no longer pulls a reaction from your nervous system. When you look in the mirror and no longer see the version of you that was broken, begging, or bitter. It's when you see someone new, someone forged, not in spite of the fire, but because of it. Look at Brendan Fraser, a man adored, discarded, ridiculed, and then reborn. He didn't return to the world seeking vengeance on those who blacklisted him. He didn't craft a revenge tour. He disappeared into healing. He moved inward. And when he rose again, it wasn't for applause. It was for authenticity. He embodied what the Stoics knew all along. The best kind of justice is personal transformation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That's more than noble. It's liberating, because when you become someone wiser, more grounded, and emotionally sovereign, their existence becomes irrelevant. Their past grip on your identity dissolves. You're no longer orbiting their shadow. You've become your own sun. Furthermore, revenge tries to erase the past, but rebirth transcends it. It doesn't pretend the pain didn't happen. It just stops giving it the final word. That's why Stoicism is not the art of forgetting. It's the practice of transforming. It's not pretending you're fine. It's creating a life so full, so focused, so deeply yours, that the past loses its voice. So stop waiting for them to suffer. That's not your job. Your job is to rise quietly, relentlessly, with discipline, with integrity. Not to spite them, but to honor you. Because the most powerful act of rebellion isn't screaming your pain. It's no longer needing to. In conclusion, revenge is the fire that burns out your soul. Rebirth is the flame that forges it. Choose wisely and choose now. Number 7, stop waiting for them to fall. Let your rise be the response. There's a quiet temptation in all of us. After someone lies, betrays, mocks, or abandons us, we silently think, just wait, you'll get yours. So we stand still, emotionally frozen, waiting for life to humble them, waiting for karma, waiting for some cosmic justice to knock on their door. But here's what the Stoics would have said. Every second you spend watching their path is a second you've abandoned your own. That isn't justice. That's stagnation. That's handing over your power. You see, when someone wrongs you, the natural reaction is to want them to feel what they made you feel. But that desire keeps you stuck in the same energy that broke you. You're not free if your peace depends on their punishment. You're still chained to them, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that couldn't be more true here. Every time you replay the betrayal, every time you wait for them to crash, every time you stalk their life through thoughts or screens, you suffer twice. First from the original pain, then from the illusion that their failure will somehow fix what they broke. But here's the truth. Most of them won't fall, at least not when you expect them to. They might look happy, they might move on, and the more you watch, the more powerless you feel. That's not Stoicism, that's emotional slavery. So what do you do instead? Picture this. A blacksmith holding a twisted, scorched piece of metal? That's your pain. That's the betrayal. He can hold it and curse the fire. Or he can heat it again, hammer it again, shape it into something sharper, something new, something that serves. That's you. You're not here to wait for revenge. You're here to transform the wound into wisdom, not for them, but for you. Look at Oprah Winfrey. She was abused, ignored, underestimated, and yet she didn't sit around waiting for those who hurt her to feel sorry. She built, she read, she healed. She created a legacy not rooted in rage, but in clarity. That's the Stoic way, rising without needing retribution. And Marcus Aurelius, he said, dig within. Within is the wellspring of good, meaning your peace, your power, your future. It's not waiting on the outside, it's within, always was. You don't need them to regret what they did. You don't need them to understand. What you need is to reclaim your life from the delay of their downfall. Because the truth is, the people who hurt you are already living in a private storm you can't see. They destroy their own peace with every lie they tell. They repeat their chaos. They carry their emptiness into every new situation. That's karma. You don't need to witness it. You just need to move on. And when you do, when you truly let go of hoping they'll fall, you rise in a way that makes their existence irrelevant. Not because you shouted louder, not because you proved anything, but because you outgrew the entire story. You don't need karma to save you. You are the karma, your growth, your calm, your focus. That is the loudest response. That is the echo they never saw coming. So ask yourself, am I still waiting for justice, or am I ready to become it? Because the day you stop checking if they're okay is the day you finally become more than okay. And that is how you win. They expected you to rage, to argue, to fall apart. But instead, you chose silence. You chose discipline. You chose growth. That is the Stoic path, not loud, not flashy, but deeply unshakable. Because true power isn't found in proving your pain, it's found in protecting your peace. You didn't win by shouting back. You won by walking away with your soul intact. That's what they'll remember. Not what you said, but what you became. So from this moment forward, no more chasing justice, no more waiting for apologies, no more bleeding for people who never asked how deep the wound went. Let them talk, let them wonder, let them watch you rise. Because your life, your silence, your peace, that's the loudest thing you'll ever say. And if this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't just scroll away. Leave a comment below. Tell the world how you're reclaiming your power. And if you haven't already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell. Because this isn't just a video, it's a movement, a quiet revolution of resilient minds.